Hello, thanks for joining me for your June monthly horoscope for the Sun or the Ascendant. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be honoured if you did so now. Please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. Every time I drop a video, you'll get an alert. Also, if you'd like to ascend above your zodiac sign forecast and embrace more serious astrology, check out my very special offer. A character analysis and a 12-month forecast, 30% off, will give you searing insights into your future prospects and also help you to understand what makes you tick at a deeper level. This is based on your time, date and place of birth and is totally unique to you. No two charts are the same. Please see the link below for more. Hello Aries, and welcome to your in-depth forecast for June. This is a very busy month indeed. So it begins with a collection of energy in the third solar house of your situation in the guise of the Sun, Mercury, Venus and the North Node. The third house is very much about our daily interactions. It can be with our neighbours, it can be with siblings, it can be around technology. So sending text messages and emails would be very redolent of this position, but it gives us a desire to engage, have sparkling dialogue, but there is some challenges as this month begins, which I need to tell you about. Now, because Mercury, the planet which governs the sign of Gemini, is in retrograde through to the 22nd, already this is a signal that we will have to measure our words, be very conscious and concentrated when we do send any messages to make sure that we don't go awry. And part of the reason for that, Aries, is that in the first week of this month, Mercury's not just retracing its steps, it's also in a square with Neptune. Neptune's in your 12th house, which is very much to do with the subconscious. It actually governs the sign of Pisces, so Neptune likes being here and it's been here since 2012, but it's probably during that time giving you a much greater appetite to explore the psychological side of life, perhaps even your more spiritual capabilities. But when Mercury and Neptune are in a right angle, the potential for misunderstanding is really quite high because our subconscious is competing with the more logical side of our thinking. So if something does come up of a particularly sensitive nature at the very start of this month, just run it through the angle between the Sun and Saturn in order to give yourself some support, because in fact they are cooperating really very well. And Saturn's in a part of your horoscope that can really be very exacting about the truth. So this can kind of offset the confusion and distortion that Neptune and Mercury's retrograde can wreak in that first week. But there's something more, because Venus is going to be moving on the 2nd out of Gemini and into the sign of Cancer. And that can give you an enormous appetite to beautify your home, perhaps get some new furnishings, could be to redecorate. Maybe if you've got an outdoor space, that's going to become much more important in the following 28 days. But it is forging a beautiful link with Jupiter, which is also in the sign of Pisces. So as much as there can be some challenges to your peace of mind or the potential for confusion or misunderstandings, a message could come through to you which gives you a massive lift in this first week too. And it could be that someone just really understands where you come from. But if this message comes from someone you're very fond of, perhaps even in a romantic way, then it will certainly give you even more of an uplift. Now, of course, Mars, the planet of passion and your ruler, has been in the sign of Cancer, so Venus joins with Mars. And in the first 10 days of this month, Mars is in a quite agitated link to Pluto. So if there is any misunderstandings, there are those proverbial cross wires, there could be a tendency to really shoot from the lip, if you like, because Mars is not at its best in Cancer. It's known as being in 4, which is a detrimental position. But also, its angle with Pluto can give us more desire to get what we want. So if you are wanting to make a push in terms of your career, this could see you being very driven and perhaps putting your more emotional or even where you live needs a little bit secondary to trying to achieve some big goal or ambition. So you can see there's quite a lot to toggle in the early part of this month. But as I said before, if you can draw things back to the Sun's location in Gemini, which is about thinking things through carefully, and its angle to Saturn, which is very stable, this just asks you to pause before you react to anything. Mars opposite Pluto can be very reactive, and there's no doubt about it that Mercury squaring with Neptune could see you receiving some information which is not correct, not necessarily intentionally. Someone could tell you a little bit of gossip, you could hear something secondhand. It would be easy to get things out of perspective. However, there is the beautiful link between Venus and Jupiter, and also that more stabilizing link between the Sun and Saturn, which just asks you to slow things down if you do feel that you're just going to respond more in a reflex type of way. Now on the 10th, we have an annular solar eclipse. And this occurs in the sign of Gemini and will provide a backdrop of energy for the next 6 months. And it could see you thinking about ideas you have, knowledge that you could share with other people. If you've ever thought of working from home or starting a business in your community, or it's anything to do with technology, your timing can be impeccable. But unfortunately, this solar eclipse does also get tangled up with Neptune. So for the next 6 months, you need to continue to sift any information that you receive with a fine-tooth comb. It's not because you're going to be looking for issues. I just feel that despite the fact that you have had this gathering of energy in a very airy and therefore very logical part of your situation, having both Neptune and Jupiter in your 12th house is really pushing the more psychological and sensitive side of your nature into the mix. And therefore, on the back of this eclipse, which does go on for so long, I would say that you need to be quite careful about who you mix with. I don't mean this in a fearful way, I mean it in a more cautionary way. So for example, if there are people at work that you like and you rub along with, but you know they've not necessarily got your best interests at heart, or they don't quite get where you're coming from, I wouldn't be too quick to share any very confidential or private information. Because if you are trying to process issues from your past, painful separations, anything to do with the more tender side of life, you may have a big need, to be honest, to communicate how you feel to others. And that would be entirely understandable because of this location of Neptune. But you get a brilliant bonus ball soon after that solar eclipse, Aries, in the guise of Mars moving into your sister fire sign of Leo on the 11th. Now, this is about as good as it can get for you, because the 5th house is obviously very Leonian, because for you, you fit the grid of the 12 zodiac signs. So it's a time for you to be self-expressive, more self-confident, to strut your stuff. You can draw a lot of goodness to you in terms of your romantic prospects, because you're just going to be emanating a much more dramatic and powerful aura, so it's great for you. Also, if you're someone who has a lot of flair and creativity, this can really start to sparkle from this time. But on the 14th, Saturn does reach an exact point in its square with Uranus. Saturn is retrograde for the whole of this month, and if you remember, it began its right angle with Uranus within 3 degrees in the middle of January. So this aspect has been coming to the fore for some time, and they come to this exact point at the middle of this month. So what does this mean for you? Well, Saturn's in the part of your horoscope to do with the truth, to do with knowledge, and to do with anything around contracts. Whereas Uranus is in the part of your situation to do with your resources. If there is something around a friendship where your values don't match to someone else you've been quite closely allied to in the past, this can be a crunch point, to be quite honest. But I think all of this month, you could become much more conscious of who you can really trust. Because sincerity is a massively underestimated commodity these days. So many people have something to say, and there's a lot of white noise out there, a lot of people saying things, and it's deciphering what's really important to us. And I think for you, it is very important that you do try to block out some of that white noise that's not really good for you, particularly with your subconscious in such a heightened state with in the guise of Neptune. Now on the 20th, the Sun actually moves into the sign of Cancer to join up with Venus and obviously replace the recently departed Mars. But the Sun, of course, likes being in Cancer. It's not as good as the Moon being in Cancer, but for you, it does push that agenda for the need for security. So anything to do with the family and anything to do with being with people who you find very uplifting can actually be very lucky for you, because the Sun's forging a beautiful trine with Jupiter through to the 26th. Now, Sun trine Jupiter is one of astrology's most lucky aspects. So if you are looking for a new home, or you hear some information from someone who reaches out to you, perhaps shows gratitude for a past generosity that you shared with them, it will really give you a boost. But I must be honest, on the 20th, Jupiter does go into a retrograde. And in the sign of Pisces, which it does govern, it's going to be retrograde through to the 17th of October, but it's going to be in the sign of Pisces through to the 27th of July. So you've got, like us all, a period of time when things can slow down. Jupiter's very much about growth and optimism, but I also feel that this can see you dive in even deeply into what makes you tick. And it's possible that you will encounter someone during this period of time who has a message or way of expressing a philosophy that really captures your imagination. So anything to do with healing can absolutely be accentuated positively with Jupiter's retrograde. Anything to do with business and expansion may be less so. However, the great news is that on the 22nd, Mercury does end its retrograde, and the care that we all will have had to show around anything to do with documentation, sharing messages, conversations, or even travel, that is going to be eased somewhat. But I would just say that Mercury doesn't fully come out of shadow until the 26th. That means it doesn't get back to the 16 degrees, the late 16 degrees, where the retrograde first began, until the 26th. And if something has been a bit tangled, I think it can be revealed by then. Now on the 24th, we do have a full moon, but this full moon actually forges a very positive link in Capricorn with Jupiter. So Jupiter can be obviously helping to steer you towards that philosophy, that person who can be some kind of spirit guide, or if you're someone who's a healer or a light worker, you can dive deeper within yourself to tap into your qualities. And of course, Capricorn full moon reminds us of that series of eclipses that we've had a couple of years ago that were so powerful with the Sun in the sign of Cancer. But I think this one does give us a potential uplift. It's saying to us, look, how can we balance our more emotional needs and security and where we live, the Sun in Cancer, with our more practical needs, the Moon in Capricorn. Now, the Moon in Capricorn is one of its least powerful lunations, because the Moon is naturally in detriment in Capricorn. But I just feel that Jupiter does provide some support, and it's saying to us, look, we need to be positive, but also we need to be measured in how we find that balance. So the new order that I feel is coming in is to be less consumed with material consumption and more concerned with emotional interaction. And this full moon just tests that out for us all. However, it is true that in week 3, Venus is in an opposition to Pluto. And this is quite powerful. And maybe someone's going to offer you some kind of opportunity. It might be romantic. I think it's more likely to be to do with work or money. And it may demand of you to leave your comfort zone somehow. And it may actually be a very genuine opportunity. But just be conscious that when Venus and Pluto are in an 8th harmonic angle, which is a conjunction, opposition or square, it can mean that somebody wants something and uses flattery in order to get it. So just be conscious of that. The 25th sees Neptune go into a retrograde. And of course, the retrograde season happens every year. And it depends on what contacts you might have in your natal horoscope, really. But Neptune in the 12th house and Jupiter in the 12th house, both in retrograde, does point, particularly that square on that solar eclipse, to you just embracing vulnerabilities, anxieties, the past, and really processing it, but not judging yourself if you need to take some time out to do this. But on the 26th through to the 30th, your ruler Mars does go into a dust-up with Saturn. If there is a chink in a romantic relationship or even a friendship, it's likely to show itself at that time. And if you've got any longer term aims, which is manifesting through the sign of Aquarius and therefore Saturn, and especially if you're very creative, you may encounter some kind of blockage or limitation or frustration just towards the end of this month. But I think you can see that if you can balance your mind, the way you're thinking creatively, your passion, especially with the glorious Mars moving into your 5th house on the 11th, and you use that solar eclipse to your advantage, which is raising your awareness to the code of communication. It's not always what people say, it's what they emit. Sometimes we might prefer them to be very frank, but there is some kind of subtext. That's what a lot of this month is about for you. It's becoming conscious of the subtext, but actually embracing your ability to see into things. A lot of very good astrologers, for example, are Aries people. So it's just being cool about that, really, Aries, being at peace with yourself, that you're tuning in to that side of your nature, which can be incredibly perceptive. And as I said, you're someone who often has the courage to go with situations because the instinct feels right. So people may say you don't always complete things, but at least you went for it in the first place. And I just think this month is just asking you to stay very much in touch with things that still need processing, but the dialogue can be bright, and also it can be a wonderful time to improve the comfort and the beauty of your home, or to get out into nature. It's been a pleasure being with you. Take care and goodbye.